Yeah, so basically this project is basically about a company that grants loans to clients and individuals, and they would like to know or identify clients that have payment difficulties, and they are the ones that do not have payment difficulties before they grant loans. And have various variables. So those variables will be able to determine those clients. So with those variables, we'll be able to know which clients would most likely have payment difficulties and clients to avoid, in order for you not to be at a loss when granting out loans. And yeah, so that's basically what I did in this project. I had two data sets. I had the application data, which consisted of the new applications made, and then also I had the previous application data set, which was just basically previous data or applications made by the same customers, the same clients, but with different loan applications. And yeah, so that's basically what the two data sets were about. And basically, what I did was I combined both data sets, but before I combined them, I had to filter out important variables and create new variables that I'll need from the previous data set. So the previous data set already had loan applications that have gotten to the final stage. They have been approved, cancelled, refused, unused, and I feel like those variables would be very good for my analysis. And I was able to perform an operation, just basically count the number of approved applications per client, cancelled, refused, unused per client, and used to create a new variable from those results in the previous application, the outcome variable in the previous application. I was able to create this for variables and merge it to my new application data set, or my application data set, which which I feel was really helpful for me, and yeah, it would be useful in my analysis. And so basically, the aim of this analysis would be to identify patterns, which indicate if a client has difficulty in paying loans, and which is the most important thing to do here to help the company. Identify missing data, basically just preparing my data sets, and define if there are outliers, data imbalance, and I'll just basically just perform some exploration and then performing visualizations to summarize my results. And so yeah, basically like I explained already, created new variables, four variables: count approved, count cancelled, count refused, and count unused offer. And yeah, basically, and the variables were gotten from the previous application data sets. And identify missing values. So basically, very first step, I received the data set. I was trying to identify missing values in the data set, and yeah, there were a lot of missing values. The lot of columns and rows that had missing data. So for these ones where we have the count approved, count cancel, count refuse, these basically were missing because I merged them from a previous data set, and then it's not every client that would have an offer cancelled or an offer approved, an offer refused. And you can actually see from the missing variables that less clients actually had offers that were not approved. So most times, most of the clients will have one or two offers or more that were approved. But you can see cancel. Not every client will cancel their offers or have refused offers. So those cells that were missing just had to be filled with zero. So it's basically there was no count for those values. So it was easy to prefill that missing cells or rows. But then I had other variables that had a lot of missing rows, and if the missing rows were a lot and I felt like the columns were not useful for my analysis, I would just delete the column. But if they were useful for my analysis, depending the type of data that is in that row. So if it's numerical, I would basically just find the mean and use the mean to prefill the missing columns. Or if they were categorical variables, then I'll look for the most frequently occurring data or value, and then use that to prefill my missing rows. Yeah, so very first thing I did was to create a heat map, a correlation heat map, to identify important variables in the data set that I would focus on. And yeah, so from the data set, you can actually easily see that the credit, which is basically the loans that the company would give to clients, had a very high correlation with the annuity. And basically the annuity is just the monthly instrumental payment plan that the client will have to pay after getting the loan. And yeah, it makes so much sense. So because the higher the loan giving, the higher the annuity, the higher the plan for them to pay the loan back would be. And then also a very strong correlation as well was the credit loan and the amount of goods, that's the goods price. And basically those two variables are very similar. They are very, very similar. They are probably kind of like the same thing, but just have a little bit of difference. So yeah, it's no surprise why they were high, strongly correlated. I mean, it's almost one, so it's basically the same thing. And then, and yeah, so moving on, then I just inspected some of those important variables that had strong correlations to just see if they have presence of outliers. And yes, and then you can see amount income had like presence of very strong outliers. Like you can see like this data here is just like out of the rest, which just shows that there are certain clients in the data set that are actually earning a lot of money. They earn a lot of money, and maybe for some certain reasons they will just need to get loans. And then we can go all the way to the bottom, and here we can see that yeah, there are a lot of clients here that fall in the same range, or the amount of money that they do earn, income that they do earn, but also outliers as well. Then before we now look at the main data, which is actually quite very small, of people that earn income. And then the amount of credits, then you can actually see that this shows that the loan company actually have sort of like a margin of how they give out their loans. And you can see that from here it's just basically clear that from this distribution, it's basically clear that there's a certain range where they are comfortable in giving out loans, or where individuals or clients will apply for loans, but there are also presence of outliers as well, where people obviously need more loans than every other person. And yeah, you can see those presence of those outliers. So this basically this variable is not normally distributed. And then yeah, and also checking this as well, annuity as well, which is the payment plan. And we can actually see that yes, there's still presence of outliers, but there's still a fairly good distribution among a certain range of the data set. And then yeah, so then checking to see which gender actually apply for more loans. And from the data set presented, it shows that females actually apply for more loans than males, so they have a higher percentage, more than half of what male applicants would apply in terms of loans. So more females were applying for loans for whatever reason. And then yes, also further investigating, more cash loans were being um, applied for than revolving loans. So revolving loans basically is just loans that you can get, and then you just have access to withdraw those loans whenever you want to, and you can also pay back, you can top up, but cash loans, they are just easier. So it's actually easy. It's quite understandable why cash loans would be more preferable, because they're just easier, they're more understandable, people understand it better, and they just want to get cash and use it at hand. So yes, and then we have car owners as well. And then from this graph, you can actually see that people without cars actually apply for loans more than people with cars. It could be that they will need more money more than people with cars, you know, and yeah, and things like that. And then yeah, so and the same thing with property owners as well. Property owners, it just shows that people with houses actually need more loans, than people without houses. And in certain environments that you find yourself in, you could actually be in a situation where a house could actually turn into a liability rather than an asset, because then you're paying a lot of things. You're paying mortgages, you're paying bills here and there, to maintain your house. You're paying council tax, you're paying so many things. And yeah, so you actually um need more money. And there's that tendency of you needing more money than people that actually don't have properties and are just living elsewhere. And yeah, so that was for that. And then also for type of income earners, and it was quite clear and also understandable why more workers are applying for loans than every other person, because yeah, they're more confident to apply for loans. They are probably even more in the population, so there are more workers in the population. Is more of a working population, depending on where the data set was gotten from. I don't really have a lot of information about where the data set was gotten from. Those are key informations as well for you to perfectly understand what the data set is talking about. So like the population, where is it from, and then and how the data was gotten. And then also checking family status as well. And we see that more married people were applying for loans, which is also understandable. You're married, you have more responsibilities, you're probably just having kids, starting out life in a different new phase. And yeah, so you need more money, need more loans. And then also educational level, we notice that people in secondary or people that have secondary educational level apply for more loans. It could be that they will need more loans, you know, and because they don't really have certain kind of jobs that actually gives them that stability in life, so they actually need loans to supplement whatever living standard that they have. And then from there on, then you had higher education. And so to continue that, checking the occupation type, you could see that laborers were applying for more loans than every other person. And yeah, that also just explains, like, laborers will need more money, probably have their educational level at secondary, like probably the highest education level. And yeah, they just need more money, so they're applying for more loans. And after that, we're having sales staff. And then looking at the target variable, we had 0 and 1. I haven't explained the target variable. So basically, the target variable for 0 basically means that these people would not have difficulties in paying loans, while the target variable 1 means that they would have difficulty in paying their loans. And that is what we're trying to look out for. And we can see that in the data set that more people have the tendency of actually um, paying their loans than people not being able to pay their loans, although it's still a fair amount of people that have difficulties. And because this data set consists of more than 200,000 records of data, 200,000 rows. And yes, so this is still a fairly large amount as well, and you have to be careful. And that's why it'd be important to identify those people in order to reduce your loss. I mean, if a company can have zero loss, that would be quite helpful. And then yeah, so I went further to check the correlation between the annuity and the amount and the credit loans that we granted, and you can see the strong correlation. As the credit loan the credit loan increases, the annuity also increases as well. The amount you pay monthly will increase, and also the same thing with goods price as well. Annuity and goods price, the same thing. And then and credit loans and the goods price, which I said before, is almost the same. They're almost the same thing, the same variable, and it's a very strong correlation. And then basically just had I compared, or I did I just checked the correlation using scatter plots for multiple variables, 4 variables in the data set, and you can see the results of that. You can easily tell that this is the annuity and the credit loan. No, sorry, this will be the goods price and credit loan scatter plots. And yeah, and yes, so then I further expanded my heat map to get more insight into the variables that I had to see if there were more correlations amongst some other variables. And I could actually see that aside the ones that we first checked, we could see that count approved had a strong correlation with count refused. Count refused had a strong correlation with count cancelled, which made kind of sense, because the more you counsel a contract, let's say an applicant has counseled this contract 5 times, if the applicant should apply again, it would seem like they are not serious. It would be like they are joking, so they might get their application refused even before they counsel it, you know. And yeah, so that is that about that one. And then yeah, basically then I decided to check out the distribution of a particular variable against the target variable, just to see if there's a balance between the two um, outcomes. So the target variable is the outcome, and so with your amount credit, you can actually see from this box plot that yes, there's sort of like a fair distribution amongst them, although we can actually see that the zero outcome actually has more data, has more, yeah, it has more data, has more results than the one target variable. And also checking it against the count approved as well. Yeah, it's almost the same thing. And yeah, so then from there on, I decided to look out for, okay, the occupation type. I wanted to know, this is where the real like analysis started off, trying to know where which of the clients would have difficulties, making those payments. And one way of looking out for those clients in a group or grouping them would be looking at them from their occupation type. So that was one way, and I looked at them from the occupation type against the target variable. And from the occupation type, you can see that low skill laborers have the highest I will have one of the highest outcomes in terms of the mean of the target variable. So basically, it's just like calculating the mean of the target variable. So if, like for instance, we do understand that, or like I explained earlier, we do understand that zero basically means that they do not have difficulties in paying their loan, and one means they have difficulties in paying their loan. So if you will perform a calculation and you see that it is the mean of the target variable compared to the occupation type is gearing towards one, then it shows that that particular group would have more difficulty. It just shows that there are more of there are more people with the one value attached to them in that particular group. So we can actually see that for this bar graph that was created, that the low skill laborers actually had the highest, almost tending towards one. Although it's actually still very low, it's 0.175, but it's the highest amongst every other person. So it just shows that low skill laborers will actually have, they are likely to have more difficulties in paying their loan, which makes a lot of sense because they are low income earners. If they take a loan, they might probably not have the money to pay back in a while. And we can see that the lowest here is accountants. So yeah, so accountants actually earn a lot of money. They have more money to pay their loans, and yeah, so it will be easier for them to make those loan payments. So yeah, so this was basically what this was about. It was quite informative. It just basically just gives you the whole summation of what we're looking out for. Low skill laborers definitely are part of the people that have difficulty paying their loans. We also have laborers as well. We have drivers as well, which will obviously also be low income earners. And we have waiter and barman as well. So yeah, it just made a lot of sense. And then checking the income type of role, we can see that maternity leave. So people in that class of maternity leave will have difficulties in paying their loan, and also it's actually very understandable because um these are mothers that are not working, they're out of work, and they take out loans because they have to take care of their kids. So it will be difficult for them to pay up their loans at that particular time. But then I would also say that it wasn't really a fair judgment, because maternity leave group, they had very few data in the data set, so it's not really a fair judgment. But then we can also see unemployed, so we can really look at unemployed. Unemployed had a fair amount of data in the data set, and yeah, we can see that unemployed is also very high, which makes a lot of sense because if you're unemployed, how are you going to get money to pay back your loan? So those are people to look out for and probably not grant them loans when they apply. And then we also had checking car owners as well, so we could see that people without cars would have more difficulties in paying their loans than people with cars. I remember initially when we checked and we saw that people that were without cars applied for more loans, so they're applying for more loans and they cannot really pay these loans, so they're actually getting they'll probably get refused of those loans, you know, irrespective of them applying for the loans. And also counters as well. It's also quite high as well. So it's almost similar. So you can't really use this to base your judgment. But yeah, it still just shows that people without cars will have more difficulties in paying their loans. And then this is a very interesting graph that I found, and because initially when we checked, we saw that more females applied for loans. Now more females did apply for loans, but we're seeing that more males would have difficulties in paying their loans. So it could be that more males are more confident in applying for loans, even when they know they can't pay up their loans. I mean, something, or I heard people say that, when a female, for instance, wants to apply for a job, she will make sure that before she applies for a job, she will ensure that she actually meets all the requirements before applying for a job. But men are more risk takers. They see a job advert and they just go ahead and apply for it, even if they don't really have the skills for the job. I probably will get rejected. More than females, and this is basically what is just playing out here. Where females, before they would actually go for loans, they would try as much as possible to calculate and see if they can pay for that loan, as opposed to men that would just take the risk and be like, what, let's just apply for the loan. So yeah, there are lesser men that apply for loans, but yet there are more of them getting rejected, and there are more females applying for loans and lesser of them getting rejected, or lesser of them having difficulties in paying those loans. And then yeah, so basically next thing I did was to create some heat map just to get further insights, on what is going on amongst three variables. I wanted to get further insights of what's going on, and we could actually see that there's a strong correlation between males, um, low skill laborers, and the target variable. So it just basically shows that yeah, there are males and low skill laborers that are male would have high difficulties in paying their loans. So you look out for those kind of people. So when you see a low skill laborer who is a man, then there's a possibility that he's going to have difficulty in paying his loan, and you just be able to carefully look at the application that he has made or refuse the application, because it's one of the highest correlations. Not that it's that high, but it's one of the highest amongst other correlations. And then the next is realty agents. So yeah, the same thing as well. Male realty agents is a no-no. It's bad. They will have difficulties paying their loans, and also female low skill laborers, the same thing as well, have difficulties paying their loans. If you look at the correlations that had very low values, um, would see, for instance, let's say IT staff was in 0.071. So yeah, it shows that that's low risk. But one surprising one that I have here is the cleaning staff. So was in 0.11, which is not that low because this is 0.11 and this is 0.18. But I mean, yeah, it still shows that they are better off than low skill laborers when it comes to paying their loans. And then yeah, so then also for against the occupation type, the contract type, and the target variable. Like I already explained before, we know that more cash loans um, were made. People, in terms of the contract type, people went for cash loans more than revolving loans. It just basically shows that okay, when someone is applying for a cash loan and that person is a low skill laborer, you have to be careful. They probably have difficulties in paying their loans. So that's basically what Jesus talks about. And then also I checked for the education type, which was very interesting as well. Education type, occupation type, and the target variable. And then we can actually see that for low skill laborers, which is obviously they come up again, it just basically just shows that low skill laborers just avoid them when it comes to giving out loans. Or you carefully look at the applications. So we have low skill laborers high strongly correlated with secondary school level. That's probably the highest educational level you have for them, averagely. And then also lower secondary school, the same thing, and also incomplete higher. So it just shows that there's this strong correlation between low skill laborers, um, lower educational level, and not being able to pay their loans. So it's something is a key factor to look out for. And then after that, we also have incomplete higher education, realty agents, and I believe if I added another variable, maybe if I added maybe gender, you probably be seeing male here. So that speaks a lot. And then yeah, we had school cooking staff as well, and we had also another high one here, which is accountants, which was quite surprising. But then these accountants with lower secondary school level that would have difficulties in paying their loan. So when you see an accountant, irrespective of the fact that okay, we had accountants that it showed good promises and tendencies of being able to pay their loans. But if you filter down more, you will see that accountants with lower secondary school level of education will probably have difficulties in paying their loan. So you have to look out for those kind of people as well. And yes, so and then basically it's just gender and housing type. You see that people renting apartments or living with parents have more difficulties in paying their loan, which makes a lot of sense, really, because and they are male. I mean, of course, of course, yeah. So yeah, so people rented apartments with living with parents, yeah, they probably have difficulties in paying their loan as opposed to people who own their own apartments, live in co-apartments, municipal apartments and things like that. So I believe people living and having their own apartments have, yeah, they have one of the lowest for females, but for males not that low, but still one of the lowest amongst males. Yeah, but co apartments, yeah, this is the lowest for males. So yeah, and yes, so this is just basically the top 10 correlated variables that I had, and yeah, so basically that's just it. And this is a summary from the analysis conducted. It showed that the outcome of the previous application, such as the approval council refusal, had little or no effect on the new applications, which was what I discovered. Rather, what I noticed was that, if an application is refused, or if an application rather is cancelled by the client, then there's a higher tendency of the application being refused the next time that they apply. So that was one strong correlation that was there. And yeah, we could easily see that laborers, low skilled laborers, would have more difficulties in paying their loan. Um, Males as well, yeah, male low skilled laborers, low. Basically, if you have a male who's a low skilled laborer and who has low educational qualifications, yes, just know that they're going to have difficulties in paying their loan, and those are people you look out for. And also, then you have unemployed, you have, and yeah, just basically, it just depends on the amount of people you are trying to target, or the group you are trying to look out for, in terms of who have difficulties in paying their loan. So, yeah, so basically, that was the analysis that was conducted, and yeah.